Now,
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Raising Vibrations and Journeys into Consciousness. Tonight, we have Tom Coates joining us to wrap up the Michael teachings and further explain soul ages, multi fragments, and continuous lifetimes. And then I think we're going to maybe discuss a little bit about Tom's life and what even brought him to the Michael teachings. And with that, Sandy, good evening. Tom, good evening. Thank
Good
you for
evening.
joining us again.
yes, thank you
Happy
for
to be here.
joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, so I can go ahead and share my screen and bring up slide number 2 if that's what you would like me to do, Tom.
Uh, uh, is that the one with the Michael reading chart? Yeah, item
Yes.
number 2. Right.
Okay.
Let's do that one.
All right, I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
All right, there we go. So it's on screen right now,
Okay.
and
Now, I don't know whether this is. I hope it can be expanded. The bottom line of this chart is one that's referred to as soul age, and I think in the last session we had, which what was it, 3 weeks ago? Um, I'm not sure, but
To,
in any event, the last session we had, I think we finished off with soul age, but we didn't really finish the subject. And so I'd like to
exactly.
go back and do a little bit of a recap on that. Soul age is a measure. If let's see, how should I put it? It's a measure of the level, the quantity of experience of a soul in a given physical plane cycle. And so everybody who is listening to this, who is in the physical, and there may be others who are listening to it who are not in the physical, but those who are listening to it in the physical are having a physical expression of their soul. I have a dog that's growling in the corner here. Is that coming across on the mic or no?
a little bit. It sounds like you're having a really good time in that
Yeah.
bedroom. So
Well,
I'm
let
just
me see
gonna.
if I can open the door and give him some freedom here for 1 second.
Okay, so we're just
All right,
gonna
all
take a little technical break here. We're
We
gonna.
have to love our four-legged creatures also.
Yes, we do. They're such little angels, aren't they?
right, I'm back.
Oh, goody.
Awesome.
Okay. Anyway, so now what that means is that we go through, according to Michael, we go through cycles uh, of evolution at the soul level within each of the grand cycles we experience, and each time we have a lifetime, we're adding to the experience and adding to our soul age, just like in a. It's very, very comparable to what we experience in a physical lifetime, where we go from infancy to our baby stage, to our young stage, to our mature stage, and to our old stage, and so um, in the course of our evolution of lifetimes in the Michael terminology, we have multiple lifetimes, of course, and the more lifetimes we have, the more experience we add, and the more we add to our soul age, and and so the Michael group creates, or in their scenario, we have five basic soul ages, which all of us experience within a cycle, and they are infant, baby, young, mature, and old. There are two more. There are two more soul ages that they hypothesize. One is the transcendental, and the other is the infinite. But these are ones that on Earth have not yet been really expressed, except in very rare cases, such as Jesus and Buddha, and maybe some great sages we never heard of. And Socrates they put in the transcendental category. Jesus and Buddha they put in the infinite category. And even in those cases, say the infinite aspect is something that's experienced only for a very short period of time. But in any event, each of these soul ages that all of us experience is one that has a primary theme, and and so in the infinite, the infant soul age is one that's involved with what Michael refers to as learning survival skills, and that is learning how to survive in a physical environment. This is much what a baby goes through in the first months, maybe a year or so of life, and so in a more subtle way in our environment. But perhaps if that baby is in some other environments, it may be quite different. And according to Michael, there are no new infant souls incarnating on Earth today because there are no ecological niches where baby souls have an opportunity to learn survival skills in the way that is compatible with being a newborn baby soul. Infant soul. I'm sorry. And so the last among them would have been perhaps some undiscovered tribes in the Amazon rainforest, or maybe some tribes in the Congo in Africa, or maybe even in some of the areas of East Africa where there have been such chronic civil wars and religious wars that survival from infancy is a real challenge. But by and large, there are very, very few places on Earth that support and nurture a baby soul incarnation. And so, according to Michael, as of right now, and this is a change that's occurred in the last year or two from, say, 10 years ago. But as of right now, there are no places on Earth where infant souls are now incarnating who did not start incarnating years ago. There's some infant souls on planet Earth, but they're infant souls that have been here for quite some time. And as an example, in each of these soul ages are 5 or 7 different levels, and each of those levels requires, according to Michael, at least 3 to 4 lifetimes to complete. So, getting through just the infant soul stage would require, in Michael's estimation, somewhere between 21, 7 times 3, and 28 lifetimes at the minimum. And some people might spend, or some souls might spend many more lifetimes than that, just getting through the infant soul stage, or lifetime evolutionary stage. And so there could be a number of infant souls, and would be infant souls on planet Earth who've been here for probably 25 to 35 or 40 lifetimes, and who began their path here, 500-600 years ago. But they're still moving through the infant soul age. Any questions on that, Sandy or Tammy?
So I'm just making sure I understood what you said correctly. According to Michael, presently, we don't have any brand new infant souls incarnating.
Correct.
Okay,
on Earth.
We
have infant souls, but we don't have an environment where infant souls can start anymore here.
That's how I thought.
Right.
Very well.
Sandy?
So I listened to this audio book about the journey of the souls and stuff like that. And when we cross over, like, we're learning how to create like the big source, right? The wholeness of everything. So would we not, I don't understand why we wouldn't be putting more souls onto this planet then. New souls. Why no more baby souls?
Well, the fact let me clarify that. That's a very good question. And the fact we're not putting the fact that we're not putting new infant souls on the planet doesn't mean that we're not putting new souls on the planet.
That's what I was just going to say. So that means more mature level souls are incarnating to this planet at
Yeah,
this time,
I mean,
because the structure is not here to
all
support
the
the
yes,
infant souls.
correct. All the guidance I'm aware of suggests that in this particular time of great transition that's going on, both in the frequency of the planet, the frequency of the transitional frequency of human consciousness, and so forth, including the additional complexity in creation as a whole, that there are many new souls coming to planet Earth who have not been here before, but they are not infant souls. They're coming from other planets. They're already highly evolved, and they would probably be either in the mature or old soul category, even though they might be having their first lifetimes on Earth right now.
And the same can most likely be said for other planets being supportive to infant level souls at this time, presumably, wouldn't
Could
it?
very well be. Could
Yeah.
very well be. And let me mention something else in that context. A lot of there's a lot of Michael stuff has all these categories and so forth. Most or many other spirit groups or soul groups or whatever they should be called, groups of beings or whatever. Abraham being one,
Mm-hmm.
Seth is one that goes back to back to the 70s.
Yes, Seth.
Which is another causal plane consciousness, um,
Mm-hmm.
and so there are a number of others as well. The Council of One is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these other groups do not necessarily agree or subscribe to Michael's rendition of these things like soul ages and so forth. They can be, as I mentioned earlier on in this series of discussions, the Michael teachings are very much like basic arithmetic is in relation to higher math. I mean, you got to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide in order to be able to do higher math, and that's really what this is all about. And it's not to be necessarily taken literally or not to be taken as the last word on anything, but it can be instructive and it can be helpful in terms of understanding
Mm-hmm.
dynamics. I mean, as one, for instance, that's been given by some in some Michael channelings about all the political issues that have occurred in recent years that have created such polarity between the two major political parties in the United States, Republicans and Democrats, is that the sometime in the 80s, starting I guess with right in the Reagan era, the Republicans started uh, uh, attracting in a very positive, in a very inviting way, um, many evangelicals and so forth. And as I've indicated previously, this is a this is a, a theme that is primarily oriented to the baby, what Michael referred to as the baby soul age, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what has happened, according to Michael, is that the parties have become divided by soul age, where previously, throughout our history, that had not been the case. There had been in both of the major political parties, there had been a relatively equal distribution of soul ages in each party. And starting in the 80s, there started to become a polarity that has become more and more pronounced of soul age between the Republican Party on the one hand, the Democratic Party on the other hand. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means that each soul age has its own perspective.
And
And
it
excuse
would
me?
it would lead to some understanding as to why the polarity is so exaggerated at this point.
Exactly. And, again, moving on in the soul age, the baby soul age, as I previously stated, is about what Michael refers to as getting the rules straight. And so, baby souldom is an area of consolidate. You've already got your survival skills down, and so now you want to have the life rules put in place so you know what to do. And this is in the lower reaches of the baby soul ages where religious beliefs and so forth are anchored, and this is what religious beliefs being a consciousness structure, beliefs themselves being a consciousness structure, but religious beliefs specifically being a system of allowing tribal groups to expand beyond what a strong man could create by himself or herself, strong man or strong woman. And so it allows tribal groups to expand from a maximum of about 80 people to an unlimited number. And that this is why ethnic, racial, religious prejudices are so hard to let go of, because they're so fundamental to our culture in some ways, because they're so deeply ingrained in terms of our belief system. And so, in any event, we have in our political parties, we have the Republican Party has adopted social platforms that are pretty much driven by baby soul ideas, and they have and since there's a great level of certainty within those ideas from the perspective of baby soul consciousness, that these are the ultimate ideas that by which reality exists. The world is governed. God intends for all, each and all of us. Then this creates the degree of resolution that they have that is hell bent not to compromise, et cetera, et cetera. It's in the upper reaches of soul evolution that multiple perspectives become more appreciated and compromise becomes more the norm. But in the lower reaches, where there's absolute certainty of that my belief is the way it is and everything else is wrong, then you see how this creates a problem. And so, in terms of different groups reaching some mutual accommodation by mutual compromise. And so, in terms of soul ages turns out to be a fairly good way of understanding the silos that have been created, and why the Republicans can be seen as so much more principled and so much more committed to their ideas than Democrats, who by comparison from the Republican perspective seem to be so so incoherent and lack of, not as firm as the Republicans, which is seen from the perspective of baby soul consciousness as a weakness, if that makes sense. Hello?
It
It
makes
does.
sense.
It does.
Okay.
It makes sense a lot.
Okay.
The baby soul is not weak, though.
I'm sorry?
The baby soul is not weak, though.
Not what?
Weak.
Weak?
Yes.
No, they're not weak. No, they just have a limited perspective, So as you go through these soul ages, you have every soul age gives you an expanded perspective and a little bit of a higher level theme. And so the as I said, the baby soul perspective is getting the rules straight, and this is, as I said, in the lower reaches of baby souldom, and this is roughly equivalent to the consciousness that we would associate with the second chakra, for instance, in terms of comparable chakra ideas. But in the lower reaches of baby souldom is where religion is anchored, and almost every evangelical preacher that you ever heard of would be from the micro perspective would be animated by a soul that's in the baby soul level. Billy Graham is the most famous in recent times, but there are many others, and so Oral Roberts would be another one. Pat Robertson down in Virginia Beach. The fellow up in Lynchburg with Liberty University, father and son, both baby souls, and so this is this is not a problem, but you see the dynamics where these people have a level of certainty about the way things are that is not the same as others at higher levels have, and so now when you get to young soul. Young soul is about per the Michael teachings. The theme of that is dominion over the physical plane. As I think I said previously,
Mm-hmm.
the first chapter of Genesis in the Bible is in the Old Testament is where it says man will have dominion over the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and so forth. That is a classic young soul manifesto, uh, and our culture, whether it should be or not, has been built around that concept for the last 3,000+ years, and so maybe 3,000, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years, but it's been built around that concept, and we can trace an awful lot of the environmental issues that we now confront to abuses of that concept, because it does not take into account the level of connection between us and other creatures on the planet. They're simply there for our pleasure and our dominion, if you see what I'm saying.
So would the priest people be the young souls then?
The priests, well, not necessarily. You can have a person who's a priest at any level. I'm just saying. I was saying evangelicals who are ministers of a fundamentalist religion are more typically baby souls. But I wouldn't be comfortable making a generalization about priests. I mean,
Okay, I got a question then. Do you remember the religious wars that took place back in, in the church, the Catholic Church? What was that area? I forget off the top of my head what they call
the Reformation.
Yeah, where they, you had to confess your sins and all that stuff, and they had another word.
The Inquisition,
Yes.
the Reformation,
Yes.
the 30 Years' War,
Yes.
the 100 Years' War,
Yeah.
all those wars.
Yeah, who was leading that? Tell me which soul age was leading that.
Well, there were various people, and I have not done a historical study of the leaders of those events to determine what their specific soul ages were. But you could certainly do that.
You're right.
And I think it probably would be a fairly interesting study to look into that. And by the way, if something I've meant to mention previously that I have not done before now, these charts are done by this particular chart that's on the screen is created by Shepard Hoodwin, who is one of a couple dozen active Michael channels. Maybe there are more than that. I personally know about, I'd say 17 or 18 Michael channels, and there are about a dozen of them that are fairly preeminent. There are more in California than anywhere else, but they range from New York to Texas to California, Colorado, include a couple of them there, and the these charts can be deciphered, if you will. I was going to say divined. They can be divined or deciphered, however you may wish to think of it. By you can just download what's on the screen right now and figure out what an individual looking at this podcast could download that chart or see it and use a pendulum on each of those aspects to determine what he or she is. And so, and a pendulum, people can go get a piece of crystal on a chain or whatever, and that's one form of pendulum. Another form would be to use kinesiology, using their arm by stretching it out or whatever. Another would be to use their thumbs and so forth. I mean,
I've heard you can use eraser heads.
Yeah. My preferred pendulum, which is quite low tech, is a number 2 pencil with an eraser with a needle and thread stuck into the eraser, holding it by a thread, and you can learn anything you need to know about yourself on this chart, anybody else for that matter. You can plot the whole chart for yourself or for your friends or whatever, without having to consult with Michael. And the chances are that once you establish a yes/no baseline with your pendulum, which you can do with a few simple exercises, simply by holding it up and say what's a yes and what's a no, then you're good to go, and you can figure out what you are without this chart this chart. To get it channeled by Michael, it costs $60 or $70, and that's inflation. It used to be like $20 or something years ago, but in any event, it's worthwhile to have the connection, but you don't have to spend the money. You can do it on your own and get probably 99% just as good results if you focus on it. So,
all right. So, if you can just email me or one of these blank ones, I will post it on the page for people to be able to download, and you'll be able to do the pendulum test for yourself or whatever means that you use to communicate with spirit to get your answer for it.
Well, and within your own body, your body knows this stuff. You don't need to communicate with spirit to do anything. Just hold the pendulum and let the pendulum do the work for you. So I mean, don't run people away by saying you got to communicate with spirit.
Oh, okay, all right, my bad.
All right, now, Sandy, just for curiosity, the one that's on the screen now, that can't be downloaded or whatever.
I might be able to take it from your presentation and then re-upload it just to the Facebook page for them to.
I mean, don't you have it? My point is, don't you have it already?
Yeah, I have it. Yes, I can do that. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I got a little bit lost on all that. Where are we now?
Okay. Let's bring it on back in.
Yeah, bring it back.
We're bringing it back. So we're going to go. We were in the baby soul, going to the young souls.
All right. So young souls. Well, as for example, I think I've mentioned previously that we lost. We all right. There we go. All right. young souls are dominion over the physical plane, and so
Oh, okay.
and almost all of our presidents of the United States have been young souls. Probably most kings have been young that have actually been kings have been young souls. Certainly, probably most people who have been conquerors have been young souls. Napoleon,
Hmm.
Genghis Khan, uh, uh, Julius Caesar, probably all young souls.
Yeah.
Um, and Alexander the Great was a upper level young soul. Um,
Hmm.
and uh, and these people are manifesting the theme of young soul in their lives, and they're probably most all those people I just mentioned were also in the king role. And so in fact, I knew an individual in my present lifetime who supposedly had a previous life as being Alexander the Great. And whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. I won't name him because he's a person who, in certain circles, is quite well known. But he's deceased now. But he supposedly had a previous lifetime as being Alexander the Great. In his current lifetime that I knew him as, he was a mature 7 moving to old 1, and quite a wonderful person. Um, and but in his incarnation as Alexander the Great, he was like a young 6 moving to a young 7 or something like that.
So
So
that's a neat little time frame to give a little snapshot of how
yeah, because
long it can take to go from, yeah,
right, yeah, Alexander the Great was living 2,300 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So how many
so
lifetimes,
right,
I'm just saying.
so he's moved in the course of 2,300 years. He has moved by a factor of 8 or 9 different soul levels,
Yeah,
and let's say 40 lifetimes between then and now,
yeah,
and and that's a reasonable illustration of how the process works, according to Michael.
according to
Uh,
Michael.
and so anyway, the in politics, mostly it's been young souls as president. Our last president was a young soul, Donald Trump, and he was a young. There's some debate whether it's a young 3 or young 5, but a young soul, one or the other. The one the Obama was a mature 5 or 6, which would indicate why, in some instances or some circles, he was thought to be sort of. In, Obama was accused of being too intellectual, too distant, too cold, too cool, all that. Um, Biden is a mature 5 as well, um, and the description of him is he's senile because he's not bombastic in the way that a young soul would be. And so I personally have not seen any evidence of Biden being senile, but you know, who's to know? I had my suspicions about Reagan, and who knows? But but in any event, and being senile is not a disqualification from being president, and necessarily being a good president either. And so anyway, um, the I don't know what Lincoln was. I suspect Lincoln. It was either a really upper level mature or maybe even an early stage old soul. If he was an old soul, he would likely be the only president we've had in our entire history who was an old soul. We will eventually get one if our democracy lasts long enough for us to evolve to that stage. But
That's debatable.
that is not a sure thing by any means.
No.
but 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 it is interesting that those things are reflective of our soul age, and as for example, there's a lot of talk these days about the fact that China is there's all sorts of perceived rivalry with China because China has become such a manufacturing behemoth and so forth, and there's not even remotely possible for the United States to compete with China in the manufacturing realm. And yet, so far, for reasons that would not have been predicted a decade ago, our economy is still a little bit more robust than China's, larger than China's, even though our population is 1/4 of China's. And one reason for that is that it's this is again something that can be interpreted in a meaningful way, in my opinion, based upon the concept of soul age. It's my understanding that, according to Michael, that China, as of 1940, which was the end of its monarchy and so forth. But it was a country that had been completely taken over by Europeans for more than a century before that, and it was a totally dysfunctional. And by in 1940, it was a colony of Japan, and had been since the latter 30s. And China, as of the 1930s up to 1940, is said to have had more old souls per capita in its population than any other country on earth, which is why within the context of that world at that time, it was so completely dysfunctional, and why it wasn't capable of building anything or doing anything other than producing a lot of opium addicts. And I'm being that's an overgeneralization, of course, but in any event, China was overpopulated by our standards with old souls, and underpopulated with young souls and other soul ages. And
so again, there was a massive polarity.
Yeah, exactly. And the United States, by the same token, in the night when World War II came, and we were inspired by Pearl Harbor to get off our asses and do something to protect ourselves, then the United States became the manufacturing uh, uh, hub of the world. You know, the car manufacturers stopped making cars and started making airplanes and started making tanks and cannons and all sorts of things. And so and that manufacturing prowess and preeminence continued through the 1950s, through the 1960s, and through the 1970s. At that time, we had the greatest population of young souls, the greatest concentration of young souls on the planet. That's what made that possible. That's when we built all these marvelous skyscrapers in New York and all around the country.
So that leads me to a question: what's going on a global level now? What do you know about different countries and
well,
their
what I was going to say was in relationship to U.S. and China. China now has for the last 30 years had the greatest population per capita of young souls on the planet.
Yeah.
And it was like they said, hey, we got too many old souls here. Give us some young souls. We need some new blood, And so young souls started incarnating in China in large numbers. And that's why China is unbeatable from the standpoint of manufacturing.
So where is the United States currently? Do you know?
United States is currently attracting more mature souls. And the United States.
And the theme of mature souls is relationships, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This has so far been the key to why as the manufacturing has shifted away from the United States,
Mm-hmm.
the economy has not declined as a result, and the reason is that we now have a greater concentration in the United States of mature souls than we do of young souls.
Mm-hmm.
And mature soul, the theme of mature souldom is about relationships, and manipulating money is about relationships.
Relationship. Yeah.
Right. Manipulating markets is about relationships.
Relationship.
And so and so these are things that have enabled the United States to remain preeminent, even though we don't make anything anymore to speak of by comparison with China and other places.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like all things, this too shall pass. But
Exactly.
for the moment, that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would advise everyone not to get too attached to the present moment because it will be displaced in the next moment, whatever that will be. But
All
but in
right.
any event, that's the as I said previously, young souls about dominion of physical dominion, manufacturing, making things, building things, and right now we have this great thing in the United States about keeping. We have this huge fight and hue and cry over over uh, border security and over non immigration and so forth, and I just invite anybody who has a home, other than living in an apartment building somewhere. Anybody that has a freestanding home, go ahead and try to find yourself somebody to build a new roof for you, put a new roof on your house without having to deal with someone who is an undocumented alien. The fact of the matter is that we don't have very many in this country who are doing that kind of work anymore, and we need every society needs a balance of soul ages, and those who are involved in those kinds of activities are primarily going to be young souls.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we want to sit around and think of ourselves as fat cats because we can manage money, we still need plenty of young souls in our economy and in our culture to make to keep our culture enriched. If we're going to continue at the same general level of consciousness that we've been.
Tom, let me ask you, when's the last time you conferred with any of the Michael channels as to the present day disbursement of soul ages in our country?
Uh, well, I don't know. Just 2 weeks ago, there was I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was a
Oh,
the
the
East
Michael
Coast Michael gathering,
Yeah.
and that gathering was attended by 9 or 10 different channels who gave presentations within it. I don't know that any of them, and they're all friends of mine. I don't know that any of them specifically got into that particular question,
Um,
uh, but they certainly, what I'm saying is not inconsistent with anything that was said there.
well, I
Uh,
guess what I was curious about is if at this time we had a clear picture of what percentage of mature, young, old, and baby we had just in our country, if they had a percentage basis. So
there,
we could see a clearer picture.
that information is obtainable, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's obtainable through various
Mm-hmm.
probably through Shepard Hoodwin's Michael uh, website, and maybe through there. I have promised, and I've failed so far to actually deliver on my promise to post a list of resources, in terms of Michael channels and websites and so forth. Um, and uh, and so uh, I will see if I can get that done this coming week. But there are wonderful resources on various Michael websites through the various Michael channels. Shepherd Hoodwin's one, as I mentioned, so and that kind of information is available. Generally speaking, right now, worldwide, the number of mature souls, and I say this worldwide, the United States is a pretty good barometer for the world. And that's one reason we have been sort of in the forefront of things for the last 75 years, maybe 80 years. And we have shifted just in the last few years from what Michael refers to as the young soul age on a global scale to the mature soul age. And I say shifted. We just stuck our toe through the door of the mature soul age. We're just doing it now. So it's not something that once you're there, once you do that, it's just now it's all mature soul. It's not at all the case. But in the same way that in the raw material scale, we have shifted from third density to fourth density. We have shifted into the mature soul age as a general statement, and so in the United States there would be a slight plurality of mature souls over anything else. The next, right next to that, with a just slightly lower number, would be the young souls. The next number after that would be the baby souls, and the next number after that would be infants and olds. And so the old souls are maybe 10%. Infants are probably 10%. And let's see, we're working with 100% here. So I would guess that if you broke it down generally, it would be something like, and I could be off on the numbers a little bit, but you would have, let's say, 31% or 30.5% mature, 29.5% young. That's 60%. Then 20% infant. I mean, 20% baby, and then roughly
10 infant and
maybe,
old.
10%, maybe even 8 or 9% infant, and 10 to 11 or 12% old. That's how it would work. And I heard just this morning an interesting. I heard an interesting channeling of oh shoot, the guy in Arizona who I can't call his name. Starts with a K. Can you help me with this, Sandy?
Chiron?
Yeah, Chiron. Yeah, Cryan.
Yeah.
Cryan. Yeah. I heard an interesting channeling from Cryan was just done 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Cryan was saying that it's the old souls that we have this great awakening around the planet that's going on planet wide, and this is mainly the old souls that are awakening, and then nudging others in various ways to get with the program. The way old people nudge young people to maybe it's better you don't drive drunk and that sort of thing. And so.
Or I'll be happy to just come pick you up. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Friends don't let friends do drugs.
Right. So anyway, the mature soul. I think that representative percentage that I gave you is probably somewhat, fairly close to being accurate. That you would have a little over 30% at the mature level, a tiny bit less than 30% at the young level, around 20% at the baby level, and a 10% or maybe slightly more at the old level, and 10% or slightly less at the infant level.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you. So were we also we were going to discuss continuous lifetimes? Is that what?
Yeah. And so let me finish the perspectives here. So, are you there?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I thought the screen was frozen. So you got mature souls, then you got old souls, and the old soul thing is about the theme of old souldom is perspective, and it's very akin to an old person. You know, the younger people are doing things and so forth and so on. The old people are just looking around and saying, "Well, it's not so important, or it's not so this, or whatever," and taking things with a grain of salt. That's the typical. That's what old soul life is about: is having a perspective that is more forgiving, more broader, more less rigid than that of the other soul ages, because they're looking at it from a perspective of, from a vantage point of seeing the great variety that goes on, and there is more in terms of connections with people. There will be a more natural simpatico between old souls and young souls than, generally speaking, there will between old souls and matures, or old souls and baby souls, because the themes are more compatible.
Like grandmothers and grandchildren, right?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, the young soul stage is one that's expansive by design.
Mm-hmm.
The one of the mature soul theme is relationships, and mature souls have the same level of certainty about they got the last word on everything that they had when they were baby souls, when they were getting the rules straight. They just have an expanded version of getting the rules straight. The rules now include relationships and not just me. And so there's a commonality. Maybe it's because of odd numbers versus even numbers, where babies are 2 and matures are 4, and youngs are 3 and olds are 5, and odd numbers are more compatible with themselves than they are with even. I don't know, but in any event, there's generally a greater level of compatibility, and there's a greater level of flexibility among soul ages of odd numbers than there is of even numbers, if that makes sense.
So you're saying that the old souls and the infant souls are more compatible, and the mature and the baby would be more compatible, or is that no?
Mature and baby would be more compatible, even though with each other, than the baby and the olds, or the baby and the young, in many ways. Even though
they're closer on one side.
Their vibrations are more compatible, if you will. And so, any questions on that, Sandy?
No, Tom, I was just looking at my chart to see exactly what number was and I'm mature 3 is so I'm off kilter because you were saying mature 4. So
Well,
what
mature 3 is right in the heart of maturitum. So you are, I mean, you're in good company. Mature 3 is exactly what Albert Einstein was, and exactly what Ken Wilber was, and exactly what Thomas Jefferson was.
a diplomat.
Yeah.
How
But
amazing is that?
and matures can be among the most brilliant and bright lights, among us, and seldom lack for certainty about what's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
But
totally agree with that.
old souls are more prone to be, well, maybe not, and
Yeah, if you want
less
to do
prone
it,
to
go for
judgment.
it. But I'm just going to sit here and watch on the sidelines. You do it. I know an old soul.
Yeah. I think you know a couple of them.
I think I do too.
Oh, that's enough.
Anyway, um, so I think that kind of wraps up the soul age thing. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the situation with the concurrence and with the multiple fragments. Okay. Or any
Okay.
questions on the soul ages?
I was just reading on mine in the print under the soul age. Mine has inconclusiveness and undirectedness. Does that sound about right, Sandy?
Oh,
Was that
yeah. Hell yeah.
Inconclusiveness and undirectedness,
was
Tom.
that that's that is that were you an old two? Is that right?
Yep, an old two.
Yeah. Okay.
I am I'm a resonate with people.
Anyway, so I just thought that was funny. So
Yeah.
okay, so what
Manifestating.
would you like to go from here with the Michael readings, Tom?
I'm sorry.
Where would you like to branch off from here?
Well, I
You
was going to
wanted to.
branch off to the concurrent. Just spend a few minutes on concurrence and a couple minutes on the multiple fragments.
Okay.
But may I take about a 1 minute biology break here?
Recess.
Yeah. You all can talk among yourselves for a minute while I
That
go.
means that our guest would like to go to the water closet at this moment in
I'll be right
time.
back. I'll be right back.
Oh my. So,
I'm trying
uh,
to clean up the show where we can,
I know.
I'm doing my best.
I think
It's
you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you. It's really hard for me though.
I know. I'm so
It,
proud, though.
it
Very
really
proud.
it really is. Right now I still have mature markings on our show on YouTube, but I am going to work and change that where any age can listen. But it's just it's an exercise of the mind, not to say let my mouth say whatever it wants to at this point.
Yes, it's an exercise of restraint and
Yes.
awareness. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've
Yes.
had a lot of help with that having little baby around, so it's really turned me into pretty G-rated. So, but I've had a lot of practice day in and day
Yeah.
out here
Well,
for
my
about.
days.
Yours are agitating it.
Yes, and plus, if any of our listeners, I hung around military folk for the longest period of my life. So, when you're hanging around military folk, they say any kind of things that come out of their mouth. So, I've learned some interesting words being around military folk. Not saying that all of them are like that, but the majority seem to have a very expressive mouth, and it doesn't really matter what comes out of it. So,
Mm. I'm interested to see what Tom's going to be saying about continuous lifetimes. I don't
girl,
recall ever. I don't know. Maybe I'll be surprised. I don't remember
Thank you.
coming across that. And Mr. Coates is back with us.
Next time I'll be sure to bring a urinary catheter so I won't have to
Oh,
take a
please.
Please get out of town.
Okay.
Anyways, so as we regroup, so what is this? You're saying continuous lifetimes? Because I don't remember.
Not contiguous, concurrent.
Concurrent. I
One
don't
thing that,
recall.
huh?
I don't recall having conversations
I
about
don't think
that.
I don't think I've had one with you, but one of the
Well,
things that many Michael channels are bringing through, and I have not run across it personally so much as they talk about it, but they are bringing through the idea that many souls, particularly at this particular time,
hmm
uh, are are expressing themselves, and I say expressing themselves. That's my personal uh, jargon because I personally think of and conceptualize a physical lifetime as a vehicle for the soul's self-expression, and
okay.
so um, this lifetime that comes through is manifesting as Tom is just a vehicle for my own soul to
hmm
express itself in the physical. Um,
I'm with you.
and so, uh, what the Michael is teaching through a number of his channels, not all, is that in the present time, and which is not something that necessarily has happened much in the past, is that many souls are incarnating in multiples, so that there may be three or four more physical expressions of my soul, the same
On the
soul's
planet
animating me
presently
presently. Yes,
at the same
and the
time.
reason for this is twofold. One is that the Earth is has gotten more population than necessarily that there are souls assigned to cover it. That's one. But the greater reason is that souls, because of the challenges that humanity faces, um, and the fact that the human experiment on Earth, if we may call it that, is potentially in jeopardy of failing if certain measures are not taken to change directions, like ecologically and so forth.
hmm
Um, that souls are needing to increase their experience quickly, and in other words, to evolve to higher levels of soul age, and this can be done rather than doing it sequentially, one lifetime at a time, by having by the soul having 10 lifetimes going on at once. Then the soul can increase its speed of evolution through the soul ages, and therefore better position humanity to get with the program and evolve in a way that will allow for its survival as a species. Does that make sense?
Yes,
hmm
it
Yeah.
does.
So
I have met one of my splinters of souls here in Clearwater, Florida, a female
right.
that she's. I know that she and I are one. There's same day of birth, same time, except she's a blonde and I'm a brunette,
Uh-huh.
and
hmm
I'm pretty sure she and I are cut from the same cloth.
Well, you very well could be right, but it doesn't necessarily have to be someone born at the same time or in the same place, or having any physical compatibility. Could be, could be one could be male, one could be female. That doesn't really matter. The thing from the perspective of the soul is to gather lots and lots of experience as quickly as possible to move from one level to the next. And And so it would enable potentially you, Sandy, to if you're manifesting in a mature 3 right now, if you have a concurrent there, that may suggest you have other concurrents around the planet. And so in your next incarnation, instead of coming in at mature 3 or even mature 4, you could be, mature 6 or 7 by
Right.
by this process. Does that make you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Right. So that's what this is all about, according to Michael. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I really don't know. I have encountered, I've checked through channeling, and apparently there are no concurrents of my soul at this time. Uh, and but I do know at least 2 people for whom there are concurrents, at least one of each. And in one case, or in both of those cases, I know both of the concurrents, and in neither case do the concurrents get along very well.
Oh,
I mean, the concurrent in those cases, I know both concurrents, and the concurrents know each other, and they have issues. Even though I don't have issues with either one, but they have issues with each other. So it's an interesting phenomenon if that's accurate. And so the fact that you're the concurrent with somebody and 2 people animated by the same soul doesn't necessarily mean that you see eye to eye on anything.
No, we don't. It's kind of quite funny,
Right, right,
actually.
right. Well,
So our
that different perspective is what allows for greater levels of growth.
yes, it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. So
interesting.
that's the concurrent concept, and according to Michael, it's not necessarily a new concept, but it is at new levels, never previously manifested. I will say that not all uh, not all the higher plane groups concur with Michael's perspective on this. So, don't take it as the last word, but it's an interesting concept.
Well, I very much kind of resonate with that. I don't know about so much on this planet, but to me, it just personally feels and seems as though I have a couple active, like, I don't even know if it's here. It just
Mm-hmm.
seems to me I experience things in a way that it seems that I have other active me's other places.
Right,
So,
right.
anyways. So it doesn't seem surprising at all to hear that that would be going on here. I guess I question why you would want to speed through it. I know when we're in the physical on a lot of levels, it seems like we want to hurry up and get through things. It's just interesting to me to think of from the soul's perspective, wanting
Well,
to speed through it.
exactly. I think I mentioned in
That
previous.
doesn't feel right to me when I hear it, but I could, I'm just sharing my interpretation of it.
I think I mentioned in a previous one of our previous discussions that both Michael and other groups talk about parallels and alternate realities. And according to Michael, and this is again not necessarily concurred with, but there are roughly 1,000 parallel universes in which each of us would be expressed in the parallel, and
Mm.
these are separate expressions of ourselves going on at slightly different frequencies. So that
That
if
resonates as
yeah,
that
and
has a very strong resonance with me.
yeah, and some of these realities will be so close that they'll cross paths with ours or coalesce with ours, and then
I
they'll
believe I
separate.
believe they do that on some level, or at least that
Right.
I experience. It's almost like it feels like glitches sometimes, and it makes me just go. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's kind of like,
And
whoa, what was that? you
There are
know?
numerous anecdotal stories that are quite fascinating about people who believe they have shifted from one parallel reality to this one, um, or shifted to another one and came back, and and so it sort of lends credence to these kinds of ideas. And and from the Michael perspective, the soul is a very powerful agency, or
Mm-hmm.
the essence, or what, of beingness, or whatever it should be called. Soul is, for Michael purposes, is the term of choice, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a limitless capacity there to do just about anything that can be imagined. And so the next topic we're going to talk about is multi-fragment composite souls, and
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I have to take a little bit of credit for having brought to Michael about 15 or 16 years ago as a as something Michael had not previously discussed. It was except in limited instances. Michael had hypothesized that Jesus and other lifetimes like Jesus of that caliber were were animated by more than one soul fragment or essence, and that otherwise people were animated only by one. And 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 in the way this came about was that I was working with a higher plane group that is not a that's not a they're not the Michael group, not at the Michael is at the causal plane level. And remember, with the six planes, and the group I was working with
Mm-hmm.
was in what Michael refers to as the Budaic level, or uh, in terms of density levels, at seventh density. And
Mm-hmm.
and I had gotten a number of, in a Michael reading, I'd been given a number of soul ages. I mean, I'm sorry, of prior lifetimes as a human on Earth, and uh, and that was something like 450. I can't remember the exact number, but um, with this other group, I asked how many I had, and the number was something like 2,500. And and I said, well, how can that be? When I was told by Michael that the number was this other thing, whatever, 400, whatever it was.
50, yeah.
And and so and they said, well, the number you got from Michael was accurate, but it only is the number for one of your fragments, what we would refer to as your primary fragment. And in fact, your being, your as a human, is animated not by one fragment, but by six. And and so that's how we get the number, because each one of those has its own history of prior lifetimes, and they all are your prior lifetimes. And those, and so those lifetimes all converge in you, even though they will not be necessarily the prior lifetimes of anybody who comes after you, except some of them. And so this was a an interesting concept, I thought, and
Mm-hmm.
one that I found that Michael people were not very happy about, because it complicates all the affiliations in various entities and cadres and all this. And in other
Mm-hmm.
words, you're members of multiples of these things, and
Mm-hmm.
so it screws all that sort of thing up, and diminishes the significance and importance of it on an individual level. Uh, but what it does in return is to add levels of complexity and levels of texture and nuance and all
And
sorts of.
nuance, yeah. I was just saying, I mean, I was just thinking, it just
Mhm.
actually makes more sense to me than not.
Right. And what I got from this other group was that this is a this is actually something that has been around for quite a long time on Earth, but in very, very uh, small percentages of the population, less than 1%. And that starting really within my lifetime, this is something that has started ratcheting up um, to a significant degree. And that, and that it's not just a phenomenon that's local to Earth. It actually is happening on planets throughout this entire universe, and that this is something this is being inspired by what I would call creation central, and and it's something that is happening in order to add greater levels of complexity, and consistent with our idea, our scientific idea that things are always moving towards greater levels of complexity, or the reverse. Uh, moving towards levels of greater uh, simplicity, or even or greater levels of chaos. But in any event, this is something that apparently is happening around, and at the point where I learned this, I was this work group I was working with was new to me, and so I was going back and forth in channeling exercises between it and Michael, and I went back to Michael and I said, "Is it possible that I am animated by more than one fragment?" And they said, "Well, let's check on that." And then the next thing they came back and said, "Oh, actually, yes, there are six." And they went through it, and they went through the lifetimes of each one, and came out to what the other group said, approximately 2,500. And so it was very interesting the way they compared it, and they said, "This is something." They actually acknowledge this is a new phenomenon, and we are happy to become aware of it. And thank you.
It seems curious to me a little that um, it seems we've also been coming into a period of coming into a much heightened awareness of being multidimensional in and of itself. It just seemed at the same time that I wonder if there's any coincidence to that.
I'm
There's
sure
a
there
much
is.
higher level of awareness
Right.
of being multidimensional beings, and it seems to me, in listening to it, almost seems like it's simultaneously happening that the fragments are also kind of going on. I don't know history the way you do, and I'm not even going to pretend to, but that's how I am
Well,
perceiving it.
Tammy, I'll give you an example of what I was just
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have encountered several people in my lifetime
Mm-hmm.
that that I felt unusually high levels of, let's say, resonance, compatibility, whatever you want to call it. And
Mm-hmm.
these were not necessarily, romantic in any way, but
Mm-hmm.
relationships that were just naturally compatible.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have found, what in parsing those things through channelings, is that in several of those instances, and it's a function of this multi-fragment aspect. In
Mm-hmm.
several of those instances, the level of compatibility that was experienced was because of the discovery through channeling that in a number of previous lifetimes, that person and I, at the soul level, had been the same person in another lifetime. In other words,
Mm.
our fragments, our essences had combined to animate a single person that
Mm-hmm.
we had both been in another lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of compatibility and shared resonance was carrying forward into the present lifetime. This is
That
a
would also be in a certain vibrational field with the essence being combined on some level. You would seem to think,
absolutely right.
right?
Yes,
So
yes.
which would and the way I just pictured it would be like that's how you would even come into the how you could very likely come into the stratosphere of it in this incarnation.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
it's pretty
Right.
amazing.
Right. So that's the kind of even though there are very few Michael students who are at all happy about. They like the concurrent thing. They don't like the multi-fragment thing because it complicates all their math and all that stuff, and all their cadre affiliations. Like, oh my gosh, you mean I was not only in the 101st Airborne, I was also in the 82nd Airborne and the 10th Mountain Division and all that at the same time? How can that be? But
Well, I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about it, though.
yeah,
Especially with the other things we were just talking about, and it'll just be more things that we'll be able to discover and delve
oh yeah.
into, just as, how long have the Michael readings even been around? What is it, like 30 years? I mean,
It's almost
everything's
50 years
ever
now.
evolving.
It's 48 years. I'll have you know. It came
Oh,
in.
all right. So 48 years, but
Yeah,
it's all always ever evolving, changing, and moving. So, I
yeah.
mean, it would make sense to me that this would also, on some levels, right?
Right,
It's pertaining to soul ages. So,
right.
anyways, all right. So,
So
go
we
ahead.
have about 10 minutes left. And hi, Nathaniel. I'm glad to see you here. Anyway, we have about 10 minutes left. And I really wanted to talk to Tom about his brother and the crossing over
Oh,
recently.
yes.
Our dear guest here, Tom Coates, lost his brother. He had an illness, right, for quite some time.
My brother was had a global neuropathy, um, which was which he had since he was apparently born with it in some respects, and it became manifest at the physical level when he was a teenager, and and uh, and by the time he was 18, uh, he was wearing braces on his legs. In those days, back in the 60s, he was wearing big, heavy metal braces that attached around his upper thighs and so forth. He walked like the actors would walk in a movie like Walking Dead or something, and because he had drop foot, his legs were numb from the thigh down, and just like if you sit on the toilet seat too long, and you get up and you flop your feet and so forth, and and so and that was just the beginning, and over time it engulfed his it went um, uh, from something in the extremities, his arms and legs and feet and hands, to something that engulfed his entire body. And 20 some years ago, he lost the use of one of his larynx. Because of it, it diminished his respiratory capacity, his cardiac capacity, everything. Every internal organ was affected by it. And but he had quite a, in my opinion, quite a heroic life. He was a teacher. He left a legacy of generations of students who revered him for his teaching methods. He's one of those teachers that would leave an impact for life. And
Mm.
and anyway, he passed away. He was in his 20s. It was predicted by so-called medical experts that he probably would not make it to 40. And when he passed away 2 weeks ago, this past Thursday, he was 8 weeks shy of his 75th birthday. So he had a wife, he had 3 children, he had 3 grandchildren. He led a remarkable life, in which the last 30 some years of which uh, were he was confined to a wheelchair, and in the last 7 or 8 years of which he had to sleep sitting up because he wasn't his cardiac function was so diminished he wasn't pumping enough blood to be able to breathe when he was lying down. And so, he had a great tenacity about him, a great perseverance about him, and he suffered tremendously in terms of physical pain. He never shared it with hardly anybody except those he was closest to, me, his wife, his couple of his children, and so forth. But he is one of these people. He must have discovered at some level early on in life that smiling and laughing produces serotonin, and that reduces pain. And so he was constantly doing that, no matter what. And he really, I can't say enough wonderful things about him. I really, there's no one in my life I've hardly ever encountered I admire more. He once he let's see, we're getting on to near the end here, but I had quite a number of post-mortem communications from him, starting within an hour and a half to 2 hours after he died. And the first one was when he was his body was laid out on the floor of his bedroom, where he had a massive stroke followed by a cardiac arrest, and
Mm.
and um, he I was sitting there with his wife, his daughter, oldest daughter who's 35, his son who's 32, and his next daughter who's 20, 28, 29 now this month. And uh, and I suddenly got a tap on my left shoulder, like 3 taps, and then there was a swirl of energy, which I recognized as him. And 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 then there was like a hand to my ear, like somebody's going to whisper in your ear, and I hear this. He says, "Hey Tom," like he says, "Why is everybody so upset?" He says, "Why is everybody crying, sitting around me in the room crying?" He says, "I'm just fine." He said, "I'm better than I've ever been in my whole life. Look at me."
That's
And
awesome.
and 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 he says, "Please tell everybody not to be so concerned. I'm just fine. I'm okay. Tell them." And I had uh, he was just full of joy. His body had become a prison for his soul at that point. It had been for many years, but he had borne up under it, and but it was just, on the one hand, I've been around him for all these years, and I miss him a lot. But on the other hand, I am very, very
Yeah.
joyful that he has find so much joy in being liberated from that the straitjacket that was his body. And
Hmm.
so and he did a remarkable job with his life. He worked until as a teacher of great import from until 5 years before his death, and even continued tutoring after he couldn't maintain a full-time position anymore. And he just I can't say enough good things about him. One of the things I'd like to mention too is that many all the guidance I've ever gotten from higher plane sources is to the effect that in the in the in the heaven realm, if you will,
Hmm.
as it's commonly called, that the queue lines of souls wanting to incarnate in bodies that are uh, compromised in the way that my brother's was. I mean, he was, for the last 35 years of his life, much like a high functioning quadriplegic.
Hmm.
That the queue lines for souls wanting to experience lifetimes like that are much longer than the available physical lifetimes for souls to have that experience. And the reason souls want that is so that they can express themselves more directly at the soul level and not get hung up on shiny objects, if you will,
Yeah.
at the physical level.
Yeah.
And and that rule, like, we have the expression, it's the exception that makes the rule. That rule is almost always true, but not always. It's true except when it's not. And my brother's life was a perfect example of one where it is not the rule. My brother did not come into this lifetime expecting or being prepared for a lifetime of physical incapacity or disability. Um, and it's too long to go into now with the little time we have left. But I will, but I could later if we choose to discuss it. Um, he came into it not knowing that, but given that it came to him without his expectation, he made an incredible adjustment to it, and it's a tribute to his, I would say, his soul age, which was an old two with
Hmm.
multiple, I think 13 or 14 prior grand cycles in the
Yeah.
micro that gave him the capacity and the perspective to be able to make that adjustment, even though he had not planned on it in advance.
Yeah.
So I tip my hat to my brother John. He was a remarkable human and a remarkable soul. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we need to wrap it up. We've gone over a little bit of time. I want to thank everybody tonight for listening here. And I want to thank our guest, Tom Coates. And I hope that you will come back on because I have more questions for you about your life. And we didn't even get to discuss it tonight.
Well,
Tom, what are you doing on the 29th?
I could do it. I could make time for you.
Or after that? Well, maybe actually, Sandy, we'll talk more.
Yeah, let's,
But very
yes,
soon we'll get you back on.
All right,
very,
All
very
that would
right.
soon.
be fun. That would be fun.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. And I guess we're going to say good night for now. We'll see you next time on
Well, we'll say
Raising.
like Arnold Schwarzenegger said in The Terminator, "I'll be
I'll be
back."
back.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.